Have you ever noticed how, in moments of absolute silence, you can clearly hear who is really there for you? I'm not talking about physical silence, but that inner silence you experience when you stop trying to please everyone. When you finally decide to be who you truly are. Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you stopped, took a deep breath, and asked yourself, am I living the life I really want? Not the one others expect from me, not the one that seems correct according to social standards, but the one that truly resonates with the deepest part of my being. Carl Jung, one of the most revolutionary thinkers in modern psychology, discovered something fascinating about this process. He observed that when a person begins to listen to their inner voice, when they decide to honor their own path, an extraordinary phenomenon occurs in their social environment. Suddenly, as if it were a natural law, some people disappear from their life while others remain and new ones even arrive. And this is no coincidence. Today's world is designed to keep us distracted, to take us away from ourselves. Social media, constant work, endless expectations, everything conspires to prevent us from listening to that silent voice that, from the depths of our unconscious, tries to guide us toward a more authentic life. Jung spoke to us about the importance of the unconscious, that deep part of our psyche that stores not only our repressed fears and desires, but also our deepest wisdom. He discovered that our connection with the unconscious is not optional. It's an essential part of who we are. And when we decide to ignore its signals, we pay a very high price. Have you ever felt that persistent discomfort? That feeling that something isn't right in your life, although everything seemingly goes according to plan? That's not a random sensation. It's your soul speaking to you, showing you that there's something you need to change, even though you fear doing it. Stop for a moment and reflect on the decisions you've made recently. How many of them were truly born from your authenticity? And how many were driven by fear, by the need to meet others' expectations, or simply by not wanting to make others uncomfortable? Jung invites us to ask ourselves these questions because he knows that decisions that don't come from our inner truth only create more chaos and disconnection in our lives. What's fascinating is that when you begin to choose yourself, when you start to honor your own path, something magical happens around you. People who are in your life for superficial reasons, those who relate to you for what you can offer them and not for who you really are, begin to drift away. And this, although it may initially hurt, is actually a blessing in disguise. Jung called this phenomenon part of the individuation process, that journey toward integrating all parts of our being. He discovered that when we connect with our true self, we manifest a different energy that naturally repels what isn't aligned with our essence and attracts what is. Choosing yourself doesn't mean rejecting others or living in a constant state of selfishness. It's not about ignoring your responsibilities or hurting those around you. It's about something much deeper. Recognizing that to give your best to the world, you first need to be at peace with yourself. This is the fundamental principle of self-love, a concept that Jung explored deeply. Self-love isn't a luxury or a passing trend. It's the foundation from which all meaningful and authentic relationships can flourish. Because how can you offer genuine love if you haven't learned to love yourself first? When you start to prioritize your well-being, when you begin to listen to that inner voice you've ignored for so long, your energy changes. And with that change, you begin to attract people and situations that are aligned with your true essence. It's as if the universe responds to your decision to live in truth, eliminating what doesn't serve you and bringing what you really need to grow. But to get there, you must first face your shadows, those parts of yourself that you've ignored, repressed, or feared. Jung spoke of the shadow as that aspect of our psyche that contains everything we prefer not to see about ourselves: our fears, our forbidden desires, our weaknesses. And although it can be uncomfortable to confront these dark parts, it's in that confrontation where change really begins. Because when you integrate your shadows, when you stop fighting against them and learn to accept them as part of you, you discover an inner power that you never imagined you had. This integration process doesn't happen overnight. It requires courage, patience, and an unwavering willingness to know yourself. But what you gain in return is invaluable: clarity, purpose, and an inner peace that no one can take away from you. You gain the ability to say no when something doesn't resonate with you, without fear of what others might think. And above all, you gain the freedom to be who you really are. Perhaps you wonder how to start this journey. The answer is simpler than it seems. Begin by listening to yourself. Every time you feel discomfort, a doubt, or even an intense emotion, stop and ask yourself what your unconscious is trying to tell you. Because, as Jung said, all the answers you seek outside are already within you. You just need the courage to listen to them and act accordingly. One of the hardest things we do in life is to listen to our intuition, especially when it guides us in a direction that challenges what we've built. Maybe it's a relationship you know no longer works, a job that consumes you without purpose, or even a dream you've pursued only because it seemed right. Jung reminds us that ignoring these signals is not an act of strength, but a denial of our true essence. Choosing yourself means having the courage to let go of what no longer resonates with you. This isn't always easy. Often, we cling to the familiar because change scares us. We convince ourselves that the devil we know is better than risking the unknown. But Jung challenges us to see change as a door to a more authentic version of ourselves, not as an ending. Think about it. What are you holding on to in your life that no longer serves you? What relationships, beliefs, or habits have you maintained out of fear of letting them go? Perhaps you feel that letting go of certain people or situations would be a loss. But the real loss occurs when you sacrifice your inner peace to maintain something that no longer makes sense in your life. When you finally choose yourself, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see clearly what was previously clouded. People who truly support you remain by your side, while those who drained your energy disappear. This isn't coincidence or bad luck. It's the reflection of an internal change. Jung called it synchronicity, that mysterious connection between your inner and outer world that aligns everything when you decide to live in coherence with your truth. Suddenly, you find yourself surrounded by people who value you for who you really are, not for who they want you to be. But this process also requires a dose of brutal honesty with yourself. Sometimes, choosing yourself means admitting that you've made decisions that don't reflect who you really are. Perhaps you've allowed certain people to cross your boundaries, or you've said yes to things that you knew deep inside you should have rejected. This isn't a reason to judge yourself, but an opportunity to learn, to recalibrate, and to choose again. Jung believed that authenticity isn't a state you achieve once and for all. It's a continuous journey, a process of learning and growth. And on that path, you'll face resistance. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you'll be tempted to return to old patterns just because they're comfortable. But in those moments, remember that true growth occurs outside your comfort zone. The world won't always understand your decision to choose yourself. There will be those who criticize you, who question your choices, and even those who distance themselves because you no longer fit their expectations. This can be painful, but it's also liberating. Because when you choose yourself, you stop seeking external validation. You understand that your value doesn't depend on what others think of you, but on what you think of yourself. And here's the most beautiful paradox of all. When you stop needing the approval of others, that's when you truly attract people who appreciate you for who you are. Not because they need something from you, but because they resonate with your authenticity. This doesn't mean you should live isolated or disconnected from others. On the contrary, when you choose yourself, your relationships transform. You no longer seek approval, but genuine connection. You no longer settle for superficial relationships, but seek bonds that nourish your soul. And in the process, you discover that the right people will always be by your side, not because they need you, but because they value you just as you are. This is the power of silence that Jung spoke about, In the quietness of your authentic self, it is revealed who truly belongs in your life. When you start living from your authenticity, the world around you changes. This isn't magic or a trick of the mind. It's the manifestation of the deep connection between your inner and outer world. Jung spoke about how our psyche projects onto the exterior everything we carry within. If you live in conflict with yourself, you'll attract conflicts. If you reject yourself, you'll attract rejection. But if you choose yourself, if you accept yourself as you are, you'll begin to notice how the circumstances and people around you also change. It's as if the entire universe conspires to reflect your new, internal reality. This transformation doesn't happen immediately. It's a gradual process, and like any growth process, it requires patience and commitment. There will be days when you'll feel like you're moving backward, moments when your old habits will try to return. But this is where the true test lies, in your ability to remain firm in your decision to choose yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely. Choosing yourself won't always be understood by those around you. We live in a world that values personal sacrifice, giving everything for others, even at the cost of our well-being. But Jung taught us a fundamental truth. We cannot give what we don't have. If you constantly sacrifice your happiness, your energy, or your inner peace to please others, what you're offering isn't authentic. It's a diluted version of yourself, and sooner or later, that imbalance will manifest as resentment, exhaustion, or even physical illness. Look at your current relationships with honesty. How many of them make you feel inspired, motivated, and at peace? And how many leave you exhausted, confused, or even empty? Jung invites us to reflect on this because our relationships aren't simply social connections. They're mirrors of our inner state. The people we choose to have close to us reflect the beliefs and values we carry within. If you allow someone to cross your boundaries again and again, it's not because that person is bad, but because there's a part of you that still hasn't learned to protect itself, to value itself enough to say no. Protecting your energy isn't a selfish act, it's an act of self-love. Jung believed that the unconscious is always working to guide us toward our well-being, but we often ignore its signals. That feeling of exhaustion you experience after interacting with certain people isn't a coincidence. It's your unconscious telling you that relationship isn't aligned with your essence, and if you decide to ignore that signal, the cost will always be your inner peace. Choosing yourself implies establishing clear boundaries, and boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, but bridges that allow for more authentic and healthy relationships. When you say no to what doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to your truth, to your dreams, and to your well-being. This doesn't mean you should cut ties with everyone who represents a challenge in your life. Relationships that push us to grow, that challenge us constructively, are valuable. But there's a crucial difference between a relationship that inspires you to be better and one that constantly makes you doubt your worth. As you begin to live from this authenticity, something wonderful happens. Your intuition becomes stronger. That inner voice that once seemed weak or confused begins to guide you with more clarity. You start making decisions that not only make logical sense, but also feel right deep in your being. This is the power of choosing yourself. It reconnects you with your intuition, with that inner compass that has always been there, waiting for you to trust it. Jung considered intuition one of the purest forms of connection with the unconscious. It's that feeling you have when something simply feels right or doesn't feel right, even when you can't explain it rationally. But to hear this voice, you need to create space. You need to silence the external noise, the opinions of others, the shoulds you've internalized throughout your life. This means stopping the constant search for others' approval, disconnecting from social expectations, and learning to trust yourself. Because at the end of the day, no one else can know what's best for you. Only you know your deepest desires, your most intimate fears, your true aspirations. And when you learn to honor that inner wisdom, the universe responds. When you decide to choose yourself, you're sending a clear message to the universe. I'm ready to live my truth. And the universe responds in surprising ways. You begin to attract people, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with who you really are. This doesn't mean everything will be perfect or that you won't face challenges. Challenges are an inevitable part of growth. But those challenges will no longer feel like a constant struggle. Instead, there'll be opportunities to grow, to strengthen your connection with yourself, and to manifest your essence more fully. By deciding to live from your authenticity, you also begin to experience what Carl Jung described as synchronicity. Those seemingly casual events that fit perfectly into your life are a manifestation of your internal alignment. When you choose yourself and decide to honor your truth, the universe seems to conspire in your favor. The right opportunities arrive, the right people appear, and everything begins to flow in a way that previously seemed unattainable. But this doesn't mean the path is free of obstacles. In fact, often the greatest challenges arise right when you decide to choose yourself. It's as if the world, accustomed to the compliant version of you, tries to test your commitment to this new path. Here is where your true power lies, because every time you reaffirm your decision, every time you choose your inner peace over external demands, you're strengthening that connection with your authentic self. It's like a muscle that strengthens with exercise. Each challenge overcome makes you stronger, clearer, more aligned. The key is to remain firm, even when doubts appear. It's normal to feel fear when leaving behind the known, even if you know it no longer serves you. But remember this: every time you choose to stay in a place that doesn't make you happy, you're closing the door to something that could transform you. Jung taught us that change doesn't occur without resistance, but that resistance isn't a sign that you're wrong, but that you're advancing. It's the necessary friction to polish the diamond you carry within. One of the most powerful ways to overcome that resistance is to reflect on what you truly value. What's most important to you? What kind of life do you want to build? What legacy do you wish to leave? When you have clarity in your values and goals, it becomes easier to make decisions that are aligned with them. And by doing so, you begin to attract people and situations that share that same energy. It's as if the universe responds to your internal clarity by manifesting an external world that reflects it. This is what Jung called projection in its most positive sense. When you project your authenticity to the world returns authenticity to you. It's important to remember that you're not alone on this journey. Although choosing yourself may seem like a solitary act at first, you're actually building a path that will attract the right people. Those who support you, who celebrate you, and who are willing to walk with you. These people don't need you to change to fit into their lives. They accept you as you are because they too have chosen to live from their truth. They recognize in you that same search for authenticity that they are also experiencing. When you reach this point, something inside you changes forever. Life no longer feels like a constant struggle. Decisions that previously seemed impossible are now made with clarity and confidence. And most importantly, you find a sense of peace that doesn't depend on external factors. Because, as Jung taught us, true peace can only come from within. It's the result of honoring your needs, respecting your boundaries, and living in coherence with your deepest values. But it's also a gift you can share with the world. When you live from your authenticity, you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes a beacon for those who are seeking their own path. And in this process, you not only transform your life, but you also impact those around you in a profound and meaningful way. Think for a moment about what your life would be like if you could let go of everything that doesn't serve you. How would you feel if you set aside the relationships that drain your energy, the commitments that don't resonate with you, and the expectations you never wanted to fulfill? Imagine the freedom, the lightness, and the clarity you could experience. This isn't an unattainable dream, it's a real possibility that's within your reach if you decide to choose yourself. When you make this decision, you begin to realize that you're not losing anything by letting go of what doesn't resonate with you. Instead, you're gaining space for what truly matters. You're creating a life that not only makes sense, but also fills you with purpose and joy. This is the gift that Jung wanted all of us to discover, that true transformation begins when we stop looking outside for what has always been within. When we learn to listen to that inner silence that reveals who we really are and who should remain by our side. In that sacred silence, in that conscious pause where you finally hear your own voice, you'll discover who truly remains by your side. They may not be many, perhaps, but they'll be the right ones. They'll be those whose presence in your life isn't a coincidence, but a synchronicity, a reflection of your own growth and authenticity. And now what? This is the moment to reflect on what you've heard. Ask yourself, what aspects of my life are in alignment with my true self? What can I let go of to live with greater authenticity? Who are the people who truly support me on my path of self-discovery? Remember that every small step counts, and you're not alone on this journey. This space, this channel, is here to remind you of your potential and to guide you on your path toward a more authentic and fulfilling life. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to let its impact go beyond yourself. Share this video with someone who needs it, someone who is also seeking answers or facing a difficult stage in their life. Every interaction, every comment, every like helps this message reach more people who, like you, are seeking to live from their truth. Imagine the change we could generate together, a community of individuals committed to living from their authenticity, inspiring each other and creating a world where each person feels free to be who they truly are. Leave me your opinion in the comments. Tell me which part of this message touched your heart or how you plan to choose yourself from now on. Your experience is not only valuable to me, but to everyone who is traveling a similar path. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more content like this. Together, we're creating a space where the wisdom of thinkers like Carl Jung can be transformed into practical tools for a more conscious and fulfilling life. Thank you for being here, for listening, and above all, for being part of this community of seekers. Remember, you're not alone. Change begins with you, and the world needs more people who have the courage to be themselves. Silence will reveal who remains by your side, but first you must have the courage to listen to it. See you in the next video, and never forget that true life begins the moment you decide to choose yourself.